Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the annual
Gift of Life Awareness event. As you know, the purpose of today's seminar is to raise awareness regarding the organ disease in Canada, as well as how young people can be involved in solving this issue.
Today we're happy to be hosting Ms. Sadia Baig, who's the Youth Events Coordinator at the Kidney Foundation of Canada. Also, Ms. Shannon Fogarasi, who is
the Programs Coordinator at the Kidney Foundation of Canada.
We would also like to welcome Ms. Vicki, who's been one of our school's mentors for the DECA organization.
At the end of the presentations, we will be having a short question and answer period with the audience. So without further ado, please join us in welcoming our first speakers.
So, my name is Shannon. I have a really long title. I'm a Director of Programs and Public Policy at the Kidney Foundation. But I'm really honored to be here today. I started off a long time ago, give my age because that would be awful, working as a frontline social worker at a hospital and really working with people who were dealing with a chronic illness, kidney disease. And we're going to talk a little bit about today about what is kidney disease and why it's so important about organ donation and really about active living. But we always start off by talking about how we're connected to kidney disease. And so not only being in the field forever and being able to bring all those rich experiences now in a very provincial way, and working with our provincial governments, but most of my family, we all somehow drank the strange Kool-Aid water and were affected by kidney cancer. So my brother's dealt with it twice. He's lost a kidney. My dad had an nephrectomy. He lost his kidney, and he unfortunately passed away this year. And so did my grandmother. So every day we kind of live and breathe these things. And the hardest thing is sometimes is about talking about being a donor. How do you bring up the conversations, right? It's really hard to talk about those things. And so I'm going to share a funny story. My son, of course, would kill me if he knew that I was saying this story. But when he was little, he's now like this tall, going to grade 9 next year. But him and I used to go to these RV shows. You know the RVs where you go in and it was really cool when you were younger to go in and you check out this little home on wheels and stuff? Well, he would say to me, he said, "Mama, when I get older and become a famous baseball player, I'm going to buy you an RV. I'm like, well, that's cool, Nicholas, but why am I getting an RV? He says, well, Mama, it's too hard for me to look after you going here and going there and looking after you like how you look after your Nana and Papa. That was when my parents were alive. So it's just easier if I just buy you an RV. And I'm like, well, that's really cool, kid, but again, what happened to my house? He says, well, Mama, and he puts his hands on his hips and he says, you didn't think you were living in my house with my wife and kids, did you? So at 9, he's starting to already think about the fact of, what are some of my wishes and values as I get older? And part of that is that, I want to be really independent. I never want to go into a nursing home. And if something were to happen to me, I want to really be able to donate my organs to help somebody else's lives. So it's about trying to have those conversations and starting to talk about those things earlier in a way that, is not in a crisis situation or in a way that when things are really stressful. So it's starting to have those conversations and having them on an ongoing purpose. So for the Kidney Foundation, we do a lot in terms of raising awareness about kidney disease and why it's so important to maintain your health. But we also do a lot of research initiatives to try and find a cure, to try and hopefully end this disease and help people so they're no longer on dialysis. So can anybody tell me, why do you think your kidneys are so important? Does anybody know? Where are your kidneys? Does anybody know where your kidneys are? Yeah. Yeah. The funny thing is, sometimes what we do is these exercises with our volunteers is we try to get them, not only to, do those tables, but to talk to people about kidney disease. And so we get like a bottle of water that has like a logo on it, and we go out in the community, and it's really trying to get people to talk. Because people don't always know how to. And they say, tell me one thing your kidneys do, and I give you a cold bottle of water. And we had this guy who said, yeah, it's to help me flush out my liver. I'm like, oh dude, you really need this water because that's wrong. Right? So anybody know what your kidneys do? What's the function of your kidneys? Anybody got an idea? Yeah, please.
They filter out waste from your blood and excrete it as urine.
Yes, very good. Grade 12 biology already?
Yeah.
Yeah, so your kidneys filter out waste products, right? So everything you eat, everything you drink creates waste. Your body sometimes needs it, but sometimes it doesn't, and so it excretes it. You see all those things actually in the fluid that your body excretes. But sometimes that fluid is just fluid and it doesn't have all that richness in there. And sometimes people aren't able to pass the fluid and it builds up in their body. And what happens is that it builds up being toxins. So if you think about your kidneys kind of like a sponge, right? The sponge has lots and lots of holes in it. And what happens over time is the sponge kind of gets gross, right? And it gets clogged. And so things can't pass through it, like potassium. Potassium typically should be very good in your body, right? Think about the things that you eat that has potassium in it, oranges, bananas, all those great things, right? And it gets stuck in the body, and the body can't move it out because all those little holes in the sponges get clogged, right? And so what happens is that it builds up in the body and it can make you very, very sick. The other thing that it does is that when you remove fluid, it also helps to regulate your blood pressure, right? So it keeps the body kind of in check with your blood pressure issues as well. The other thing that it does is that it tells your body, your brain really, to create a hormone that's called erythropoietin. But essentially what that is to tell your body to create red blood cells. And your blood cells give you the energy. So you can imagine when you're filling up with fluid, you don't feel well, right? Because you're not able to pass some of the fluid with all of that toxins in there in your body. Then the other thing too is that you feel like you're dragging a bag of potatoes behind you because you don't feel like you have the energy or the strength to do much of anything. And the hard part is that most people don't know that they have kidney disease. It's not like there's like your broken arm and there's a cast and people can see that those things are happening. Often what happens is that people don't know that they have kidney disease until it's much late. It's very late. And so it's hard for people to sometimes to understand what's happening to them, and sometimes it's a bit of a shock as to what happens. So, does anybody know of some of the other causes of kidney disease? Does anybody know anybody that's affected by kidney disease? You do? Yeah, absolutely. How about diabetes? Oh yeah, hands go up. So kidney disease is the end stage of diabetes, more or less. Diabetes still progresses, where there's lots of other illnesses associated to it, but diabetes is the #1 impact of kidney disease. The other piece too is blood pressure. Sometimes what happens with your blood pressure over periods of time, if you see these, I don't know if there's these little things here, these are your tubes, really your arteries. And what ends up happening sometimes with, blood pressure issues, if you think of your arteries like a straw, right, and you have the restrictions all the time, what ends up happening is that there's no oxygen that comes through, right? So the blood is not able to filter through, and so it becomes necrotic. They become dead cells. And that scarring, sometimes in the arteries, can make it very impacted and also damage the kidneys as well. So it's amazing when we just sort of saw how many people put up their hands for diabetes, but 1 in 10 are affected by kidney disease. That's incredible, the number of people who are affected, right? As we talked about diabetes, we talked about blood pressure as being a significant piece. The biggest thing that people can do is to go to their family doctor yearly and get blood work done. Your blood work kind of gives you a roadmap to let you know what your hemoglobin is, because remember your kidneys tell the body to create red blood cells. It tells you about how well is your kidneys filtering, right? So there's a filtration rate in terms of that. And it also tells you all the information you need to know about your electrolytes. There's some things that you can do to prevent kidney disease, right? Active living, being very well, decreasing salt. Now, why would salt be an important factor to reduce in your diet? Anybody have an idea?
It increases blood pressure, so your arteries stretch out.
That's right. And if you think about an elastic band, right? What happens to an elastic band when you keep stretching? That's kind of like your arteries, right? It becomes very flaccid. Absolutely. What's something else? Why should you decrease salt in your diet? So we got blood pressure. Anybody in the summertime, you guys would never have this problem at your age, but swelling in your feet, retention of fluid, right? Because the salt, it kind of makes all your blood vessels, it keeps the water moisture in, right? So it makes it even harder for that to pass, right? So decreasing salt's a big thing in your diet. I'm not going to go over through all of the diseases that impact kidney disease. I think the biggest one to notice is the issue about blood pressure, right? Salt you can decrease, that can help to stabilize the blood pressure. Diabetes, maintaining your sugar levels. A lot of it's related to the foods that we eat and be able to maintain our physical activity and our exercises. So, and then of course, right, the issue about smoking and vaping and how those impact your blood pressure and your lungs and how that's related. And well, hopefully from your age you're not engaging in alcohol at this moment, but it's to make sure that also with regards to your blood pressure and your fluid management. So we talked a little bit and this is the hard part. Can you imagine if you were told one day you can't eat French fries and poutine? Right? How difficult would that be? Okay, but look at what the packages that you eat when you turn it around, and what does it say in terms of the sodium content? So when your kidneys aren't working the way that it should be, it's not filtering. And so all that stays in your body, and it makes it very hard, right, for you to be able to feel well, to have energy, to do things. When the potassium buildups too hard, you're making too much work on your heart, so you have a higher rate of having a heart attack. So it's so important when you have kidney failure that you're monitoring what you're consuming, the fluids that you eat, but also what you eat. Because what you eat, eating oranges, could kill you. Isn't that incredible? Because of the high rate of potassium. And everybody's different. It all depends on their blood work. So they're monitored by a dietitian. But you can see how you think about food. Food is so important in terms of your family, in terms of your community, right? The holidays coming up, all those delicious foods that we're going to eat, and how challenging it is for an individual not to be able to sit and enjoy in the same way, and to have to really consciously think about what it is that they're consuming. So right now, the biggest thing that you can do, keep this good, keep exercising, doing walking. Walking is the easiest thing. Starting to become a bit more self-aware in terms of the food that we eat and how well that's impacting our body and helping us to stay strong and healthy is very important. Has anybody know anybody that what happens to them when their kidneys are no longer working in the same way? Does anybody know what happens? There's a nice student here.
They go on kidney dialysis.
Dialysis. That's an ugly word. Dialysis. Does anybody know what dialysis means? Well, essentially it's an artificial kidney, right? So your kidneys work 24/7, all the time. And when they're not longer working in the same capacity, and people are starting to feel very unwell, they need to do dialysis. And there's two ways of doing dialysis. So one is, well actually there's three. One is, they get a transplant, right? So they start asking questions and talking to their family members about the importance about kidney health and kidney disease. And they ask their friends and family about the opportunity to donate a kidney. Does anybody know, how many kidneys do you have in your body?
Two.
Two. How many do you need to live?
One.
One. So that's incredible. We have a spare organ inside of us that can actually save someone else's life so they don't have to go on dialysis. And there is, in Ontario, close to about 12,000 people who are on dialysis at this moment. Not everybody can get a kidney transplant. Does anybody know what might impact people from getting a kidney transplant?
Long lines.
Pardon me?
Long wait and lines.
Okay, so the wait list is forever long. Yeah, absolutely. What else?
To match the blood type.
Okay, blood type is very important. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so I wonder, because sometimes in our kidneys we have one might be bigger than the other. Yeah. So size may not be, depends, because some people's kidneys are quite small. After a period of time, sometimes being on dialysis, it shrivels. Sometimes they'll leave that kidney in the body when they're doing the transplant. Does anybody else have some ideas of? Yeah.
I'm not sure if you have to pay for them.
Well, in Ontario, we're very fortunate that it would be covered under OHIP. But for people who are in other countries, or sometimes when they have potential donors in other countries, it's a bit challenging sometimes to get them here, but with Trillium Gift of Life that they can help as well. The hard part is I think that people don't know much about, donating a kidney. And they don't know much about, unfortunately, about how easy it is to sign their donor card to be a donor, and how important that is. When we look at, stories of, the bus accident that happened a few years ago. Does everybody know the story that happened it was in Alberta?
Yeah.
Right? And because he had a conversation about a story about learning about what happened to one of his coaches, and be able to have that conversation with his family. Now, we hope that nothing ever happens to anybody. But it's really important to have these conversations so that way our family members, and sometimes it's easier to have those conversations so we can alleviate some of the stress that our families feel as well about having to make those decisions. But it's also, from an individual to be able to have the comfort level of being able to ask their family members or their friends about the opportunity for a living donation as well, right? So what happens to a lot of the people that we work with is that there's a majority of folks who are on the wait list, and the wait lists are really long. And as much as we're trying to do with doing public education and awareness and working with the provincial governments to change legislation, so that way it's everybody is opted in and you have to opt out. That will increase the rates, but unfortunately what happens to a lot of people when their kidneys fail is that they have to go on what's called dialysis. Whoops, the other way here. So what is hemodialysis? Hemodialysis can happen either through a line in one's neck where there's an access in their arm. It's usually 3 times a week at the hospital for about 4 hours. Blood essentially goes out of the body, it filters through a machine and gets brought back. People who are doing it 4 times a week, some of them feel fine, some of them feel up and down with their blood pressure. Imagine what it'd be like if you had to split from school, not because you're skipping class, but because you had to go to the hospital and you had to go for treatment. And how challenging that is as a youth to explain to your other friends why you're never in class, or why you're missing so much class because you're in the hospital all the time. And the challenges of, even with body images, right, and scarring, and not wanting people to see that you have a fistula, how difficult it is, especially for youth, I think, as well. The other one is the one in the belly. And peritoneal is not necessarily with blood, it's more with fluid in your body. Essentially, there's a small tube that's put in your stomach, and if you think of your stomach like a tea bag, inside you have a bit of a lining, right, that holds your organs in place, and then there's kind of like the peritoneal wall, it's just space. And what happens is fluid goes in, it's kind of a sugar-based fluid that goes in, and just like a tea bag, all the impurities come through the hole. So it looks like when it drains, like urine. So when you dip a tea bag in, you see all the impurities come in the water. That's essentially what kind of generalistically happens in your belly, so to speak, and all the impurities come through there. And people will do this typically overnight while they're sleeping. It's a bit more gentle, it's a bit more easier to manage and still have the flexibility of your day. But it depends on all individuals whether or not they're able to do one form of treatment or another. So you can imagine what life would be like if you had an illness and you didn't have the opportunity to get a transplant prior to needing to go onto this treatment. And the challenge with this treatment is you can't really skip it. You can skip class, but you can't skip dialysis because you'll get sick. And if you don't do it over a period of time, you'll die. Because it's a life-sustaining treatment. So people do this up until they get a transplant or until they pass away. So you can imagine how difficult this is to deal with this, because it sucks, no disrespect. And it's really hard to think about, oh my God, this happened to me. Why did this happen? What did I do? And there's nothing anybody did, it's just the chemical balance of their body and the impacts of their kidney over a period of time. So we try to develop a lot of support groups and peer support groups to help people to talk about how difficult it is and how to manage their disease and how to navigate the healthcare system and really become their own self-advocates. So we have a number of things that we talked about, diet. We have a community kitchen. We try to do some fun things. We get a chef that comes in with loblaws or so weeks, and we do some cook-offs because it's helping people how to cook differently in a way that's a bit more renal friendly and helping them. We do lots of different ways of trying to provide peer support, and what you guys might be interested in too is that we've been doing a lot more support groups with youth and young adults and working at sick kids and in a lot of our peds hospitals, because it's hard when you're a kid understanding that I'm sick and you're trying to navigate through school, and there's no superheroes in nephrology, so we kind of need you to really be that superhero because young kids look up to you as being their mentors. If anybody has younger brothers or sisters, you'd really see that happening a lot. And so we have lots of different types of literature and stuff, and you're going to see that out there. You know, we talk a lot about the importance of organ donation, and really that's really trying to help people so that way they don't go through these aspects of despair and having to go on to dialysis. The wait list is exceedingly long, and there's numerous tests that people have to go through. The potential donor is probably the most healthiest individual possible, because they get all those tests that we probably would never ever have in our lifetime, because we wouldn't request them. And so they're really tested well to ensure that they're the most healthiest and most viable person that can offer a kidney. And typically, somebody who's donated a kidney is up and walking within a few days and out of the hospital in a week. And the differences from a quality of life point of view is, you know, the individual, when you're going to talk to two individuals about their experiences, but it's being able to have the ability to run again, or to things that you think where your life is going to go. It's not to say that people on dialysis have those difficulties, but it's much more challenging at times. And you're always dealing with the fact that you have to be at the hospital 3 times a week or more, you're going to one appointment to another, you know, and you don't have the same sort of energy feel. And this sort of tells you that, you know, you can always go to Trillium Gift of Life and you can see how many people are actually on on the transplant waiting list. And the transplant waiting list can be anywhere. They say it's relatively between 5 to 6 years, but sometimes it can be longer, based on your health, different things that happen to you, other comorbidities, and you know, blood type someone had mentioned, how well your body is accepting it or rejecting it. And it sort of talks about the differences of doing not only a kidney transplant, but a kidney pancreas for those that are dealing with issues of diabetes. The biggest thing that the Kidney Foundation also does is not only about coming out and doing talks, but also doing a lot of work with our government officials. You know, sometimes decisions are made and they don't really have the same awareness of how it impacts patients and family members. And so we do a lot in terms of government advocacy to try and help create that awareness as well. So one of the things is dealing with the financial burden. You guys are still in school, but imagine the majority of your parents getting sick and not able to work. And then because they're not able to work because they're going to the hospital all the time, then they're not able to pay their mortgage payments. And they're not able to pay for the high cost of rent. Medications are really high, blood pressure meds are really high, buying special foods. And so majority of the people, not all, but majority of the people who are dealing with kidney disease who are on dialysis deal with poverty, exceedingly poverty issues. And so a lot of it is trying to advocate to our provincial governments about accessible, affordable transportation, and also about a universal medication plan as well that we do. One of the easiest things that you can do, actually, these are kind of fun things. I always do this all the time, even with my son because he's growing all the time. This is just a bag, a simple bag that you can fill clothes. All of your, you know, sheets you don't want, clothes that you don't fit anymore when you're going to get new for Christmas. And this gets donated back to the Kidney Foundation, and then I get to write checks to patients and give it back to them. So that way, people aren't making those tough decisions of do I eat or do I divide my pills and give half to my wife and half to me today. I mean, it's really incredible when you think about the poverty issues that people are doing. And this is something quite simple that you can do, is just do a clothing drive as well. So I think I'm going to stop here and I'm going to let Sadia and talk a little bit.
Okay, hi guys. So my name is Sadia and I'm the programs coordinator at the Kidney Foundation. I'm also a patient. I actually got diagnosed with kidney failure randomly when I was 14 years old. And it was a huge adjustment, a huge shock, because no one in my family was ever sick. I was the only one. I hid it from my friends. I got bullied because of it. And it was hard, you know, you're 14 years old, you're growing up, and you have to be on dialysis right away at Sick Kids Hospital. So I would go to class all day, high school, and then after school at 3 o'clock, I would take the bus and subway downtown, and I would go from dialysis, would not be home till about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and that was 3 times a week. It was difficult. When I was 16, I had my first kidney transplant, and that was from a deceased donor, so somebody who signed their donor card and then they passed away and I got their kidney. And that one, unfortunately, only lasted for about 3 years. It actually failed in my first year of university and my first week of university. So I was not a part of Frosh Week, and within the couple of days and weeks, I actually failed like politics, psychology. I failed a bunch of courses because my mind wasn't there. I didn't make any friends because, again, I wasn't a part of Frosh Week. It was really difficult. And from then, I was on dialysis for a good 10 years. So I got my degree, thankfully, but it took me 6 years. And I was working full-time, I was volunteering in school and doing dialysis at the same time. So it was a lot. And then I had my second transplant when in 2015. Unfortunately, the hospital didn't do a good job, and that one, I got my first rejection 6 days later. It lasted 2.5 years, and I got to travel freely to Hawaii, I got to live a little bit, but then it failed, and now I'm currently on dialysis. And because my kidney function is at 0%, it's now shriveled up, it's small, doesn't work at all, I actually go for dialysis 4 times a week for 4 hours. So I work full time, and after work, I go for dialysis. It's very exhausting, it's very daunting, but you know, we're not gonna give up, we're strong, and this is why I do what I do, because I want to empower young kids, especially at Sick Kids Hospital, who are going through it. When I started at 14, there was a little baby who was 3 years old with a line in his chest, in a diaper, in a crib, having dialysis. And his mom gave him a transplant. And so size, like you asked, it doesn't matter. His mom, who's an adult, gave a 3-year-old a kidney. They check to make sure that it's gonna work, it's gonna fit, they do all the things that they need to do, all the testing, but it just shows the importance that you honestly never know who's going through this. I look perfectly healthy, I'm exhausted right now, and Shannon knows this, but it's one of those things that we can't judge people, and we have to understand what they're going through and ask those questions. You know, if you guys have questions, ask away, because we want to spread the awareness, we want to support. When I was at Sick Kids, supporting them, through our youth supports, we had young kids who were 16, 14 who came to us and told us, I'm getting bullied because I had a transplant and I was drinking water. And my friends were confused, why are you drinking so much water? Or why are you taking these medications to keep your transplanted kidney alive? They didn't have the answers, and so their peers, who were supposed to be their friends, were bullying them. And so we don't know what someone else is going through, and spreading that awareness, educating everyone, and you know, understanding what somebody is going through, because you don't know if it's poverty, if it's them not having enough food to eat, if it's something, we don't know. So spreading that awareness and supporting your peers going through this, it goes a long way. And I wish, you know, I had more of that growing up, but this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I get it, I understand. So, you know, go out, spread the awareness, talk to your family about organ donation if it's something that you're interested in. And even if you're interested in becoming a living donor, talk to them about it. You obviously have to be 18 and over to actually do something like that, but at least talking about it with your family, it goes a long way. So that is my story.
So I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I am a living donor. 4 years ago, my daughter, 4 years ago, my daughter was not feeling great. She didn't have a fever, she wasn't flushed, but she couldn't keep food down. So, you know, I'm thinking, okay, it's probably food poisoning. So I put her on what's called the brat diet, which is bananas, applesauce, rice, and white bread. And that just made her worse. And I kept thinking, like, how can you not keep a banana down? Well, bananas are high in potassium. She'd gone into kidney failure, and there I was pumping her full of stuff that was full of potassium that was just making it worse. Anyway, so I took her to the doctor, you know, sent her for blood work, and Saturday morning I got a phone call from my doctor who said, get her to the hospital now. Now your creatinine level, which is the level of toxins in your blood, should be, at your age, about 60. My daughter's creatinine level was 1286. We almost lost her. She spent 5 days in ICU at the hospital. She had gotten to the point also where she was building up enough fluid, and oddly her feet hadn't swollen, but her lungs were filling with fluid. So on top of throwing up all the time, she had this funny dry cough, which is funny because the lower half of her lungs was full of water. There's nobody in my family had kidney disease. I've never heard of it before. I had no idea what was coming. And yeah, she wound up on dialysis. She was in hospital for a month and a half. at Mississauga Hospital and Credit Valley Hospital. Bringing her home, and they sat us down with the dietitian, and the dietitian's giving us a list of the things that she can't eat. And my daughter was weird things. You're not allowed to eat whole wheat bread or high fiber bread. You're on white bread. The Wonder Bread that your parents say, ew, why would you want to eat that? That's what you're allowed. No tomatoes. I know I don't look Italian, I'm not Italian, but we eat a lot of tomatoes in my family. Tomatoes completely out of the picture. No spinach. No potatoes. White rice was the only thing, but you had to sort of keep it under control. Like our diet changed drastically. And me being a little bit OCD, I was being really, really careful to the point where the dietitian at the hospital one night said, Vicki, you gotta let up on the potassium. She needs some, so you gotta let her have a little bit. But yeah, I'd be keeping her on the diet so rigidly that she actually went too low. But we spent a year and a half doing the dialysis. We went to the hospital for, I guess the first 6 or 8 months we were in the hospital 3 times a week for 4 hours, which was like, loads of fun. Then she went on the peritoneal dialysis. But we traveled once. The peritoneal dialysis machine is like 60 pounds of, and it doesn't come in a bag that has wheels on it. So we traveled once with the peritoneal dialysis and said, yeah, this isn't happening again. My family are campers. In order to go camping for a week, it took us a month and a half of organizing with a hospital in Huntsville to have dialysis. They only had 6 machines. So the only time that I could take my daughter to Algonquin Park was when somebody from Huntsville was on vacation and was not there. So we got to go for a week. It meant that we had to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, which meant we had to leave Algonquin Park at 5:30 in order to get to Huntsville for 7 o'clock. Yeah, it really took all the joy out of camping. My husband and I were both tested to see whether we were compatible donors. And what the hospital tells you is you're going to find out things about your own health that you don't want to know. They had to do so many tests on us. I had to do that running test because your heart has to be in good shape. Your kidneys have to be in good shape. All of your organs have to be in good shape. You know that ad where they show a young man walking down, a room with the little sample bottle of pee? And he's looking really embarrassed because everybody knows he's carrying pee. I had to walk in with a 24-hour collection. I had a 5-gallon jug of pee walk in with. Yeah, there is no embarrassment worse than that. But I wound up being a good donor. My husband failed because he has a teeny tiny little kidney stone. And they weren't going to give her a kidney that was going to be bad for her. Anyway, so on Wednesday, May 15th, my daughter and I were there for our kidney transplant. My decrepit old kidney started working before they had finished the transplant. Her creatinine level went, like when she was on dialysis, her creatinine came down to about the 500s. Her creatinine level went down to 72 within 48 hours of the transplant. Oddly, my remaining kidney kicked into high speed. I'd been on blood pressure meds for 15 or 16 years. And when the one kidney was gone, the other one went, oh, was I supposed to be dealing with that? Oh, okay. I haven't been on blood pressure medication since my blood pressure is actually low, so it's been good for me. I was home on Friday. Because Rachel did so well after the surgery and my kidney did so well, she was home 3 days after the surgery. They did not remove either of her kidneys. She now has a kidney in the middle and 2 non-functioning kidneys on the sides. My scar is about this long. And then I've got a whole pile of little scars because your kidneys are actually at the back underneath your ribs. So what they had to do was go in and remove, like put an incision and then pull all my other organs over. So I've got a bunch of little puncture wounds and then one little scar. But honestly, I was back up and running. I think I came here to the school in June. So about 5 weeks later, I was driving and everything was fine. My daughter is going through the problems with all the medications that she's on that stop her from affecting the kidney. And I always say, you know, don't stop taking the meds. There was no more kidneys to be given. She's got the only one I'm willing to give up. But yeah, the amount of medications that she's on, if we didn't have OPEP, I don't know that we would be able to afford them. And it's even harder for her because she never learned how to swallow a pill. So all of her medications come as liquids, and they don't taste good. They really don't taste good. They're disgusting. Anyway, I think we're gonna answer some questions now.
So does anyone have any questions at this point? Feel free to.
So I was just wondering if the failure rate for transplanted kidneys is like so high, is that the only option for people? Or, like, how long do kidneys usually last after they get transplanted?
I'm on the PFAC committee, which is a patient family resource group at St. Mike's. One of the men who is in our group has had his transplanted kidney for 25 and 26 years now. So no, my daughter should die with my kidney. Probably 30 or 40 years from now, because she's 30 now.
So there are a lot of different variables into how long a kidney lasts. The longest living kidney donor has had his kidney transplant for about 48 years. The longest deceased person, the person who's had the deceased kidney is about 46 years. So it all depends on, your age is a bit of a factor, but it also depends on how well you take your meds, how well you're drinking your water, how well you're eating healthy, and just having that overall healthy lifestyle, it goes a long way. And then there's variables that we can't predict future-wise, that if they get sick or something, but the success rate is very high. Any other questions? Okay.
All right, so at this point, we would like to conclude today's seminar.
And so first of all, we'd like to thank everyone who came out today to the seminar. We truly hope that you learned something new about organ donation. We'd also like to thank Ms. Saxena and Mr. Euphrates and the school's administration for this event, because it would not be possible without their efforts.
We'd also like to give a big thank you to our speakers for making it out here today and really being able to share this knowledge with you. And we hope that everyone is able to leave today's presentation with a great understanding of what organ disease is and how you guys can be part of the solution. I'll leave the last word to Ms. Sadia Baig.
So I just want to let you guys know that we do have a lot of fun volunteer initiatives for you guys to really get involved in as a school specifically. Like Shannon mentioned earlier, we have the donation bags. If you guys decide to do like a fundraiser to donate your clothing, that would be awesome. We also, at the very end of September, we have a kidney walk. The kidney walk, locally, it's in Mississauga at Arundel Park, and then we also have one at High Park, different days. And they're just a great way to come out, join other patients and families and caregivers, create a team to raise awareness, raise donations for the foundation that we give back financially to patients and families, because that's what Shannon mainly does. And this is a great opportunity to do something with your school, create a team, compete with other schools, do something fun, and just honestly get involved in your local community and support patients that you wouldn't know that would need support. So.
The other thing too, people are interested, next year we're going to do a big splash, because I love a big party, and we're going to really put kidneys front and center and talk about why kidneys matter. So we do a lot of education events, going out to the community, teaching people about the importance of their kidneys, but we also have a number of for people who are interested, who love to argue. It's called social policy, just so you know. It's an actual thing that we do. It's about how do you lobby and really connect with your political leaders, either your MPs or your city councillors, to really talk about change in the system. So that can be talking about how they're going to be changing our public accessible transit system and how that impacts across Ontario, talking about pharmacare, talking about housing and poverty issues. We're doing a Kidney Health Awareness Day on March 31st at Queen's Park. So we'd love for you to get involved as well. It's a great opportunity to really be able to network with some of our political officials as well.
Thank you.
Can we get a round